First off, I wanted to say thank you to Square Enix, particularly Ria, for the early access code. It meant the world to me, and that any and all content you see here is copyrighted and owned by Square Enix. Hey everyone, J7J's here, the OG and real Final Fantasy Tactics YouTuber, bringing you my review of the Ivalice Chronicles enhanced version on Steam. While I didn't get to go to PAX West, I did manage to get a review copy, which was a dream come true. And again, thank you to Ria, of course, and for all the people in the comments for your support and love. This seems small, but I'm truly grateful and blessed for being recognized. Now, just a warning in my review video, there will be some visual minor spoilers. So if you want to see some gameplay of future battles, events, and so on for yourself, just please click away and listen to the audio of my review only. I will also mention the spoiler yet again when I'm showing completely new dialogue in a later part of my video, not seen in both the original Final Fantasy Tactics and in the War of the Lions. So please click away. I will also have a visual cue for that. Now, I have a lot to talk about and will easily jump around and go back and forth. At the time of this review, I'm shy at about 100 hours. I beat the main story on the hardest difficulty, Tactician mode. I also did Midlight's Deep, so I did a lot of things as well. I mastered all the jobs for Ramza, so I'm more than happy to answer anything in the comments and questions. I'm by far the most active and responsive YouTuber, so please, leave a comment and subscribe. I'll be there for you, and I'll answer anything that I see. If I don't see it, or if I miss it in a chain of replies, leave a completely new comment. Or an alternative option is to follow me on Instagram and send me a DM if I don't get to your reply, or if I don't see it. It's also J7J's here. So with all that being said, let's get started. I can't speak for the other ports of the game. I'm just talking about the Steam port and enhanced version. So for me, it was very solid. I had no issues with setting up my controller. It read it completely fine. And if you don't have a controller and rather play with your keyboard, the whole clicking was fine with me. You can click on everything, kind of like War of the Lions on BlueStacks. It was great. And you can also use the keyboard to type in recruit names when you want to go to the Warriors Guild or Soldier's Office. It was awesome. It was an effortless switch, being able to go from controller back to keyboard. So amazing. Awesome design by the developers. For me personally, I encountered no crashes or visual glitches or anything like that. Although when I start up the game, it tells me I need to update my drivers or the game might not run properly, and I saw no problems. And just for reference, I do all my gaming and activities on my MSI GE75 Raider, which has an i7 10th gen processor and NVIDIA GeForce RTX. So I'm not sure what kind of computer or device that you're running, but with what I have, I had no issues whatsoever. It was smooth, and it's been an awesome port so far. Now for this section, it's the quality of life. And I think the Ivalice Chronicles does it the best out of all the versions, and the developers really thought about it. So what I love about this is you can reset and avoid random battles. And of course, you can decide if you just, want to step on Mandalia Plain and trigger the battle yourself. This is amazing for a variety of reasons. Let's just say you had a piece of equipment that was rare, like the Genji set, that was broken in battle. You can go back to the world map and you'll be fine. Or let's just say in Midlight's Deep, an enemy with Treasure Hunter picked up the one-of-a-kind Zeus Mace or Staff of the Magi. This is really handy. Or if you didn't set up your party properly, it's also very nice. You can also reset your moves. However, with certain abilities like mana font, life font, or teleport, you can't do that. And it's great. You can also readjust before deploying as well, and you get an overview of the battle. Just note that in certain battles, like story battles, you're not going to see what you're going to face, but you'll get a visual idea. So, on certain battles, you may want to go with movement +2 or jump +2. You know what I mean? There is also an option you can toggle on to get rid of monsters quickly. So, with like chocobos and pigs, if you want to keep Boko in your party, there is a way to easily dismiss the other chocobos or other monsters and eggs. It's awesome. There's also like an autosave feature or continue feature on Steam. Let's just say, something in life happens, like you gotta step away from the computer. You can Alt F4 and it'll continue off where you left off, which is great. However, I still recommend saving in extra slots if you want to repeat a fight or something like that. And again, it's amazing. Just like the roster space, of having 50 monsters or characters, you have 50 different save slots. So just the developers really thought of that here. In my opinion, this is the best quality of life I've seen for a recreation of a game. And yeah, I'd give the quality of life alone, like overall, like 1,000 stars. It's from going from unforgiving to being forgived. It's a nice breath of fresh air. I'm not as young as I used to be, so I'm going to make mistakes. The guest changes. So I see a lot of people speculating and looking at things like you can control your guests. I can't wait to see the Ninja Kafgarian trick. Unfortunately, you can't do this. Like, you can't change the abilities of the guests in your party. Now, you can remove equipment, by the way. So just another minor heads up. I'm not going to go into details. In Chapter 2, before a certain fight, yes, you can remove the equipment, and it will make that battle a whole lot easier. So, again, no massive grinds like getting deleted to Dark Knight, which, for RIP, we don't have Dark Knight in this version, at least from my experience. I thought I killed over 20 enemies. I mastered all the jobs on Ramza. So, yeah, no Dark Knight. And no massive grinding with guests. Of course, you can level them up, but I feel like levels don't do as much, especially this time around in Tactician mode or in general. So, there's that. For sound quality, it's actually still very solid. It's not one-to-one as the PlayStation 1 version. I still feel like that version, set the standard so high. But it makes sense. They lost the source code and had to recreate it from, by ear. So some things will be different. And some abilities definitely feel sped up. I'm going to show some examples like... and also mention the summons or the espers. Not as good as the original, but sound-wise, it's better than War of the Lions, in my opinion. Just, everyone has their own ear or taste in what they like in terms of, sound. So I'll let you be the judge of that. But I'm not going to show all the clips. I just wanted to show my clips with my favorite ability, the Night Sword, aka Shadowblade here. I'm going to show the PS1 version, the War of the Lions version, and also the Ivalice Chronicles. So again, all the abilities, from what I've been hearing, all of them sound differently. So let's just watch this part together. For difficulty settings, it's something for everybody. I like how you can change things in Switch. Like you can go from Tactician mode to Knight and to Squire. Now, I really didn't play Knight mode at all, so I can't really speak for it. And for Squire, I only played it a few times, but I will say from Tactician to Squire, it's completely night and day difference when it comes to the overall difficulty of the battles. But if you wanted something like a stream or like a VOD of you just doing Tactician, you know, just leave it on that. But as for Tactician, now if you're a Final Fantasy Tactics expert, you know, like myself, I've played the game a lot, you will have difficulty. However, if you know some of the abilities and whatnot, you can power, I mean, you'll know the tactics and strategies to beat the bosses. So in my opinion, the bosses do get harder considerably by being faster and stronger, while you do less damage. I'm kind of torn between that, because I really wished we got to see more, you know, different abilities and whatnot. But your whole plan, like, you can't just power through it. I really like how this made for a lot of the other bosses in the late game, like the Lucavi. They're much, much harder to deal with. And I'm gonna have a tier list later, and I'm gonna go into certain things that definitely got better, and definitely stepped down. Again, higher levels won't help you. Like, the bosses don't scale with you. For the enemies, like, it depends on the enemies. Like, it's mostly like the Reavers, you know, later on. Just like in the original and in War of the Lions, of course. Just being higher level will not help you out. You know, you have to understand, like, abilities and setups, equipment options. They will be your friend. Just like, you know, in the other previous versions of Final Fantasy Tactics. So with difficulty, this will come to gameplay balance. Now, I wish I had more time, and I'll eventually make a follow-up review, you know, years and months later, like going into finer details. From my experience, like, there hasn't been that many nerfs. You know what I mean? Like, people are going to look at the Arithmetician and Orlando nerfs, but I still thought Arithmetician, like, the abilities are insane for the class. Like, if you're playing base Arithmetician or Calculator, it's not very good. It's when you put the arithmetics on other things, that's where it shines. It's still insane in this game. As for Orlando, he's still an excellent character. You know, I made that video, a tribute to the pre-nerf. In Tactician mode, he isn't going to be your, you know, saving grace. He's still going to be an excellent party member, and I still recommend him. But, you know, I don't think he's going to be the MVP, in my opinion. Archers, I still think they're bad. Like, the aim got better, but it's still not cool. So, yeah, they're still very weak, in my opinion. Cloud Strife, he definitely got better, but he's still, in my opinion, not going to be, you know, one of the top guys, which I feel is sad. As for Rafa and Merrick, I do think they're better. Just make sure you're targeting an enemy when you're casting their mantra spells, and they're more accurate. Way more accurate in the PlayStation 1 version. As for War of the Lions, it feels like they kind of copied the formula for it. Now, this next part applies to Orlando and Meliodul. Like, that's how they pronounce the names in how they say, so just going with that. Their Unyielding Blade or Mighty Sword definitely changed. I've noticed, like, even on Squire difficulty, the damage isn't as high as it used to be. And they will work on monsters, because, you know, in the PlayStation 1 version, those abilities were not usable on monsters. In War of the Lions, you'd use them on monsters as well. They did massive, massive damage. In this game, like, the first strike that you do that breaks equipment, it's going to do a good bit more damage. But after that, if the target doesn't have a selected equipment or armor piece, then the damage will be dropped. So to me, those abilities did get nerfed quite a bit. And we also can't forget the teleport change. That's 3000 JP. It's expensive, but I believe the cost of increasing teleport to 3000 makes a whole lot more sense than fly being 5000 JP or the Dark Knight's HP boost being 2000 JP. I think those weren't as useful at all. So there is that. As for other things, if you thought they were great in the original and in War of the Lions, they're still good in this game. You know what I mean? Some things aren't as good in the harder difficulties, but hopefully I cleared that up there. And last but not least, as for males, I've been noticing they still are better than physical attackers. Females are better at magical, but the twist and gameplay breaker is that because there is no Dark Knight, females don't get move +3. Males will get move +3. And more importantly, this is going to be a spoiler in terms of gameplay changes. The males can now equip. All right, visual cue. They can equip the exclusive, like it was only the females back in the day, the hair adornments and perfumes. So because of that, to me, the males get even better this time around. And it makes certain things a whole lot easier to do and set up. Another thing that I forgot to add about the difficulty settings or being able to change it, you can't change it in a location where there are sequential battles, meaning you're stuck in a location and you go to the next one and to the next one. You can't change it then, but you can also go back to the world map. However, you're going to lose your progress, anything that you gained, and so on. So just keep that in mind. But I still think having this feature is a whole lot better than getting soft locked or being stuck in a place and you can never go back to the world map. So Square Enix, Mahito and the team did a fantastic job here. Now, in regards to the poaching mechanic, for the most part, it's relatively the same. You see an enemy or monster and poach them, you need to use the regular attack, which it says here in the ability description. However, what I like, what the team did in the Ivalice Chronicles, is that there's a whole lot of good direction and quality of life, which, you can see based on this clip here. And another good thing is that the item, it tells you which monster drops or what you get from each carcass, as you can see here. And if you don't like this set item, you can also sell the carcass to this guy who looks like Caillou from the Poacher's Den here. So again, the base of poaching, the mechanics are still the same. Not a whole lot has changed. You're probably going to do less damage with, physically attacking this time around than before. But as it stands, the way you get the monsters is the same. The way you go to the Poacher's Den, the time you unlock it is going to be the same. However, you can see what you get from the thing or the monster, and you can also sell it. So again, it's a whole lot of quality of life. And yeah, it's nice. If you got it before, you'll get it even better now. For the voice acting, overall, I'm going to say I really, really enjoyed it. I think the cast did a stellar job, in my opinion. This is also a hot take because I think he deserved a little bit better, in my opinion. But it also goes to show you his range, that he can portray different things. It shows his ability as an actor. Ben Starr, out of all the people and all the voices that I've seen, I think he hit it out of the park. He plays Dice Dark, aka Dice Dark, the elder brother. He did a good job. Fantastic. He's the most memorable performance that I can think of. I also think Ovelia did a great job. Ramza. But I just wish Benstar got a, better character that he had. Like, Dicedog is just so hated. And I wish he did more in terms of a combatant. You know what I mean? He did a lot of whole political and behind the scenes stuff, which I'm not going to go into details for this video, so I'm not really spoiling anything here. But yeah, Benstar did a fantastic job from the lines and delivery. But I just wish he got more of a, warrior fighter kind of guy. But yeah, that's my hot take. I wish, well, I mean, I'm sure we'll see more of him in the future. I think he's got a great career already and can expand on. But back to the voice acting. There is an option. You can lower the volume. This will turn off the voices. So if you get tired of hearing the grunts from the monsters, the chocobos, the characters in your party, from the ability quotes, if you want it to feel more like War of the Lions or the PlayStation 1 version, yes, you can turn off the voice acting in the options if you want. You can also go to Japanese if you want. So there is that. So I do like it for the most part. I keep it on, but just for the visual purposes, I turned it off for this video. It is nice to have everything voiced. So, if you're doing a video, like a Let's Play or a stream, you don't need to read everything out unless you want to. The cast did a great job overall for the most part. I give it out of 10. For like the non-named characters, like the people you see, my only issue is that for the most part, it wasn't as memorable. You know what I mean? Everyone didn't sound as distinct. Like, when you go into a scene with like, oh, hey, this random guy's talking to you, and so on. It was hard for me to kind of distinguish the voices on that. But again, to each their own on their ear and what they like for sounds and music. Not everyone's gonna love, Hybrid Theory, Linkin Park. So that's the way I see it in terms of sounds. I recommend you just play it for yourself and you be the judge. There will be some visual spoilers for this part of the video, so it's going to be on additional dialogue here. So all it is visual. Please click away on a different tab here and just listen to me if you want. Now for the additional dialogue, there is additional dialogue in regular scenes and also in certain battles. It was there at times. Other times I couldn't see anything, or maybe you have to activate it in a certain way, like attacking, taking damage. But several of the side characters will feel more alive and they will get some love. However, in certain battles, like as you can see here, you're clicked away, please still click away. I could not get these characters to talk more in these certain fights. Again, I need to experiment more and, play some of these battles and play the game again. But certain characters, I wish we got certain dialogue in certain parts. But I also love how we also get some dialogue, because in the original and in War of the Lions, we only had like Ramza doing the talking. Or in War of the Lions, we did have a few lines with the extra content at the end of the game. But in the Ivalice Chronicles, it feels a whole lot more polished, like, with the story and characters feeling alive. I wish we had more of this, because this was my selling point. But overall, I think it's wonderful additions to the story, and you're going to love it. The Genji gear. Now, I know this caused a bit of like an outrage, I think even more so than the War of the Lions, where they got rid of it. Or, I mean, you can still get it, but you can't steal it from Eldor. Now, the Genji gear, yes, it can be stolen, as you can see with what I'm wearing here and with some of the clips. So, originally, Kazutoyo Maehiro didn't want this because, in the Japanese version, you couldn't steal it. But looking back on it, I thought it was a great, thing that you could steal it, because if you can steal it, it shows that you understand the game mechanics. You're playing like a tactician. You are a master at the game, essentially. And the gear isn't really all that overpowered. Like, The Genji shield, I'd prefer the Crystal shield or even the Aegis shield because of the magic evasion. The Genji shield doesn't have any magic evasion, it's just physical. The Genji helm gives you no other stat bonuses. It just gives more HP than the Crystal helm, which you can buy at the shops. And I mean, the extra HP can save you, but you know, if something's gonna one-shot you, like doing 900 damage, you're already over. The Genji armor as well gives more HP, and the Genji gauntlet, you know, the +2 to PA and MA is wonderful. So something like a Samurai or Geomancer will definitely get better from that because they both use their PA and MA. Of course, MA is still used exclusively for Iaido, but you know, Geomancy is a different story, PA and MA. But it's not game breaking per se. It's not overpowered. So I'm glad the Genji gear is back. Those are my 2 thoughts on the Genji gear. But again, an additional feature which I love. And yeah, on Tactician mode, it's tough. So the strategy I showed in my original video, that can still be used with some tweaks, of course, but it's still very doable for the people who really know and understand Final Fantasy Tactics. The treasure hunting or move find iteming. This was an issue in the original. I wish it was fixed in this version. Or I mean, the mechanics of it. To me, it still sucks. So again, to get a rarer item, the higher chances of you picking up the rare item, let's just say, for example, the treasure tile has, you know, Escutcheon 2 or Javelin 2, as you can see here. The lower your bravery, but also being a chemist helps with the probability. Like, being a chemist is a new mechanic this time around, but the lower bravery still sucks. I just wish, you know, you could just pick up the rare item instead. Or like, you know, maybe you pay Gil or something to, you know, pick up the item again. But still, this is probably like a feature and mechanic that I wish was changed, you know, just so you can pick up the rare item. But yeah, you're still going to need that character with the lower bravery. So when you're doing something like Midlight Steep or Nobeska Temple, you might want to retry the battle again by returning to the world map or readjusting your party setup. So again, the treasure hunter sucks, but it is what it is. Now, I should have touched on this subject before. Again, there are visual spoilers, like visual cue spoilers here. Nothing that will ruin the story, but the ability quotes. So they are all different than the original PlayStation 1 version. I don't know the exact translation from like the War of the Lions Japanese version, since that had ability quotes, but you know, in the English War of the Lions, like the NA and Europe, we didn't have ability quotes. So yes, the ability quotes are back this time around. They're all rewritten. All the voice acting will be done, you know, with the ability quotes, so it will be a cool thing. I don't think the ability quotes and some of the ability names are as cool in the PlayStation 1 version. Like, you know, Stasis Sword or Judgment Blade back in the day. You can't beat that, you know what I mean? I thought this time around they weren't as cool. They're still cool, just not as. I'm glad they're still in this version. I'm kind of mixed on delivery, but it's hard. Like, you know, I'm not a VA, so I'm kind of like backseating, but I still think it was fantastic. It makes the battles way more epic. So yes, the ability quotes are back in the game, and if you don't like the sound, you can just turn off the voice volume. So I'm glad they are back. It's kind of true to the original PlayStation 1 version. For this part, we're going to talk about the post-game content, or things that you can do in the later part of the game. And spoiler alert, well, not really, Square Enix already said it, but yes, we will recruit Cloud Strife, or can, yet again, earlier, quote unquote. And I'll also go into Midlight Steep as well. As for the Cloud Strife of recruitment, the developers this time around followed the War of the Lions procedure. You know, you can get him before, you know, the Dystarg battle and, you know, Limberry Castle battle. And you can start it as soon as you're in Chapter 4. Of course, you're going to need to progress through the story to be able to get him, and in turn you're going to recruit other optional characters. So as usual, make sure you keep certain characters, certain story characters that you're going to get in the game. Otherwise, you can't. So yes, you can recruit him earlier, but it's just like in War of the Lions, like how early you can recruit Cloud. Just slow down with your dialogue in certain 2 scenes when you're presented with choices. You're going to want to be nice and say yes. Do not decline any of these, or it's game over and you won't get Cloud Strife in your party. As for him getting better, he doesn't start at level 1 anymore, which is amazing. However, the battle where you have to make sure he survives, I wish he did a lot more. He kind of, like, for the OGers, you're gonna know he just, spoiler alert, click away or mute this part for like 5 seconds. He just runs away. All right, now you can unmute the video. For gameplay and balance changes, he is better. I feel like the abilities are, going off faster. I still recommend quick charge or swiftness, or in this game, it's called swift spell for Cloud. And spoiler alert, so you can click away, his surprise at Ravinia Volcano, or Mount Ravinia. It helps him, but I still don't think he's one of the best characters, unfortunately. But he's definitely better. It's a step in the right direction. But it is what it is, because I love Cloud Strife, guys. This one does hurt. But yeah. Moving on, though, as for the post-game content, the Midlight's deep. It's still hard, you know what I mean? You're still gonna have the same exits and treasure tiles as the original and War of the Lions. Some of the names of these places will be changed in the Ivalice Chronicles, but I have 2 videos showing all the treasure tiles, all the possible exits. So please check that out. I'm gonna have a description for it below. I'm also gonna have an updated video for that eventually, but still using the original, versions or War of the Lions for those clips. So, but they're still the same in the Ivalice Chronicles. Yeah. As for the last boss here on Tactician mode, yeah, the stuff I said about him in my tier list video, let's just say he gets ranked up a bit more. Now, if you understand how he works and the game really well, you're gonna be fine. As for people like other Final Fantasy YouTubers, I sense they're gonna have a, challenging encounter here with Ivalice. So, yeah, there is that. As for the post-game content, I still wish there was more, like in War of the Lions, but, it is what it is. Still fine changes, and I'm glad the development team drew inspiration from the War of the Lions version. Now, for the Chronicle or biography, like your main menu is great. The details and story characters, like in the biography, are so amazing. And you can also go back and take a look at what it has said in the earlier parts of the chapter. Because, in Final Fantasy Tactics and War of the Lions, you couldn't do that. Once it progressed past a certain point, you could only see the bio of the character. Like, let's just say if you're in chapter 3, you couldn't go back and see what he or she looked like in earlier chapters or their bio then. So I really like this. The visuals for like the artifacts, other things, achievements even. It is all amazing. The visual overhaul, the quality of life, the descriptions. You'll get to learn more about certain characters from reading this. And of course the dialogue, like I said earlier. More of the characters will come to life. I couldn't encounter it for everybody in certain fights. Maybe there isn't. But overall, the Chronicle main menu is amazing. And speaking of amazing, let's go back to the formation screen, or the new formation screen. I love this because you can adjust your party members a whole lot easier and customly. Like, if you want Agrius next to Ramza, or Orlando next to Agrius, so on, Beowulf next to Reese, you can do that. It's wonderful. I will say though, I do miss the original job wheel from the original game. Like, it just felt more appealing, as well as the shiny star. I like that visual better, but overall, I will say it's awesome. And before battle, like, let's just say you have, sword abilities on, like sword play for Orlando, or holy sword for Agrius, or spellblade for Beowulf. Before you deploy them or things like that, it will say that you can't use these abilities. So there's a lot of quality of life. You're not just going in. It tells you. It's very forgiving this time around. I think a lot of gamers back then, were like, oh, Final Fantasy Tactics is so unforgiving. But, it appeals to the newer generation and us veterans alike. It's a nice visual cue. It can get annoying after a while because, for those of us who's played this game, and just like myself, I've played the game and made content for a long time. It can get annoying, but it's nice to have that reminder because, sometimes we're gonna make mistakes and we're gonna forget. So I do like how it gives us the heads up, or if you didn't learn any abilities and so on, it will give you that heads up, like, yeah, you didn't learn any abilities in this section and or for this job class and so on. So I do really like that. And there's more like descriptions on the abilities, like the developers did their homework when it comes to the mechanics of the game. Like, there's a whole lot more details on certain abilities, like, reaction support and so on. So you're going to be learning a lot just from reading, and I like that. So there's voice acting, but you still got to read in this game and really prepare and set up your party. So while I mentioned this in the past, and interviewers have asked, the development team this, so the original team did lose the source code. They obviously did some reverse engineering from what I've seen from playing, and they also added, quite a bit. So the original Final Fantasy Tactics is around, not even a gig, but Ivalice Chronicles, at least the Steam version, is 10.1. So they did a lot in terms of adding things, quality of life, as you can see with the visuals. Which leads me to the graphics of the game. I do like how they kind of stood by the original, as opposed to going with a different, style. Like, I think this visual is fine. I think it aged really well. It stayed to tradition. And also the lighting on certain scenes, like, they did work. Like, visually, it looks better. I wouldn't say drastically better, you know what I mean? I've heard some in the comments say, like, wow, this is next level graphics and all that. But when I think of next level, I think of, like, Cloud and Tifa in the original Final Fantasy VII to Advent Children. In Tactics, no. Like, it gets better, like the scenery, the character sprites, and so on, but not to that level. It's nicer, but, like, it's refreshing, but it still relates to that nostalgia. So personally, I like the graphic style. Everything is smoothed out, but it looks like they took some time to go back and draw and do some details. So I do like that. But yeah, it's the feeling of the original, but new. So I personally like the graphics. Now for the conclusion of my review, I'm going to give it a rating, and I'm going to talk about the positives. I'm going to talk about the cons and talk about some things I wish the team did a whole lot better. So the positives. Visually, I love how it stuck to the original, but it improved, so it's like nicer. You know what I mean? I will say though, some of the lighting does hurt my eyes at times. Like, my eyes are a bit on the sensitive side. Like, I gotta wear sunglasses out in Hawaii, like prescription sun. And like, looking at this, sometimes it's beautiful, but it hurt my eyes a bit, like the lighting. But again, like, I'm impressed by it. Nothing like original 7, Final Fantasy 7 to Advent Children graphics level of improvement though. So it's nice. I really like the graphic settings. The voice acting I do like for the most part, especially with named characters or the people we encounter, kind of like, you know, the enemies and randoms. Nothing really stood out to me as much. Like, I'm not gonna say, you know, those guys, those you know, enemies we face were like Ben Starr's level of performance. But then again, he's, you know, next level when it comes to it. But a lot of the main characters, you know, I do like as well. It was good. Overall, the quality of life is amazing. With being able to go back to the world map to avoid random battles. It's very, very nice. And you can go back and look at those settings because in the original, like, there was tutorial mode, yeah, but these things come up while you're playing the game. So it's nice to be able to just jump into the game and kind of learn from there. As for the difficulty settings, I can't speak for Squire or Knight as much. You know, if you're doing random battles though, I do recommend Squire. I never tried Knight just because, you know, the random battles can really catch you off guard. And especially early on, I'm not going to say one enemy, but let's just say those cute things can do more damage than you and outlast you in a certain way. So be prepared. There are ways to tackle it, which I'm not going to show quite yet in this video, but yeah, just be prepared on those things. I love how most of the things are still relatively the same from the original, like mechanics wise, with, like, you know, faith, bravery, how weapons work, how abilities work, and so on. Everything is pretty much almost nearly one-to-one. I really like that. This also goes into the cons of, hey, I wish there was more balance and all that. I mean, things got better. Like, Rafa and Merrick are better. Cloud Strife is better. But are they next level? No. But at the same time, in regards to balance, and I've like said this before, it's a single player game, and even in multiplayer games with like patches, you know, pro gaming scene. I used to be a high-rated World of Warcraft player, high-rated Heroes of the Storm player, you know, Masters, and yeah, Duelist. It's impossible to balance a game, you know. Once the developers put something out, we the gamers are going to play it more than the developers. We're going to see things they don't know. It's just natural. So in terms of balance, you can only do so much. At the end of the day, there's no such thing as real balance, and we just got to enjoy what we have. I do wish we got a little more for like certain job classes. I mean, some things do get better in Tactician, absolutely. I'm going to have a tier list video on that, give my reasonings and explanations. So yeah, in terms of balance, I don't really think it's as big of a deal. Some people are going to emphasize this more. Me personally, not really. If Square or people wanted that, like, I did send that invitation, or I did mention in the video, like, hey, invite me. I'm going to improve certain things on certain job classes. I made a video a while back, so it's a long one, but things definitely got better. Or consult like Tactics League or Tactics Live, you know, other amazing Final Fantasy Tactics creators who could probably balance game better than me, especially when it comes to multiplayer in a multiplayer setting. But yeah, I'd probably say if Square Enix wanted to redo this game again or send out a balance patch, and definitely invite us three. But to me, the balance is not the end of the world. This is more of a single player thing. Yeah. The mechanics of poaching, all amazing random battles. I've discussed this quite a few times. The additional dialogue to help bring new life to the characters was awesome. However, I will say the cons of it. I do miss the War of the Lions content. Obviously, a lot of the names and so on, mechanics, like, you know, recruiting Cloud Strife earlier, came from War of the Lions. Like, you get him a bit earlier, you don't get him after Egro's Castle with Dice Dark. Yeah, like, even if this version included Onion Knight and Dark Knight was a grind, and it's not going to save you in some of these tactician fights. Like, you can't just expect, oh, I have a team of Dark Knights and then I'm going to take on, the later game Lucavi. It doesn't work like that. Even with Orlando, just having him in your party is not going to be the I win button. You know what I mean? So when people talk about balance, I'm like, where are your multiplayer achievements like mine? You know what I mean? Yeah. So Onion Knight, yeah, was kind of meme-ish, but I still think options are always nice. So again, Dark Knight's just not going to save you. Even if we had that option, like, there are ways to work around it, but for the most part, you can't just say, hey, Dark Knight, bam, I'll be fine. I do miss, like the other War of the Lions content, like Disorder in the Order, Linos in the Liege Lord, and so on. That was wonderful. The multiplayer, obviously, the co-op, the melee, that sucks. But we do get the new scenes. You can go into the Chronicle and view the cinematics. I think my last con is, Ramza, butt pants chapter 4 in those scenes. But I mean, it is truer to the original, what he wears and all that. So I can look past that. So what does it come down to? I can talk for hours. I could do a live stream. There's people joining in on the chat and I answer your questions. But what is my final review of this game? Where would I place it among the other Final Fantasy Tactics and versions? So, I will say, compared to all the other Final Fantasy Tactics games, I do think overall, like from a single player point of view, like in terms of getting more story, quality of life, this is the best version of Final Fantasy Tactics from the story perspective. I think it's better than the original one. I'm all about paving the way, but this one just aged better. Now, how does it compare to like War of the Lions PSP version? Now, I think the War of the Lions PSP version, the slowdown did suck. You could work around it. The audio wasn't as good, but it's still, this version still kept, the dialogue, like the changes and the names and whatnot. So in terms of extra content and doing more things in the post game, Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions is the best one for that. So in my opinion, the best versions, I'm gonna have to put this as a tie. Ivalice Chronicles, War of the Lions, original Final Fantasy Tactics. I'm gonna say Tactics Advance 2, Final Fantasy Tactics S. I never got to play S. Most of us never played S. So there is that. That's my ranking for the game. Now, what's my number for this game? Because this game came out, like, I'm gonna have to give the original a little bit less. You know what I mean? But because I've been doing this for so long, and I really don't want to nitpick. You know what I mean? I can nitpick for another video, but for me, this is a buy if you love the story of Final Fantasy Tactics. You want something, newer with like difficulty settings and whatnot. However, if you're expecting like War of the Lions content and scenes, the jobs, you're not going to get that. Which I feel like if that was included, the Dark Knight, the content, the multiplayer, this would be like game of the century in my opinion. But to me, it's still the game of the year for single player. I still wish we got a little bit more in terms of the dialogue and certain balance changes, but I still love this a lot. So if you're into Final Fantasy Tactics, like if you don't buy a lot of games, this is for you. I'm gonna have to give this game, this is tough. It's better than the original for sure. It's better than War of the Lions in terms of story and performance and quality of life. If you're a newcomer and are interested in it, just the whole visual cues of like, what had you evade via, status element via equipment, with your shield, with your cloak, and all that. The visual cues, like what's going to be a support ability, what's going to be a damaging ability, what's going to be something offensive. I just think this game did a whole lot and expanding in quality of life. There's trophies and achievements. By the way, there's only one that's missable. Keep that in mind. Like, if this version came after the original and not War of the Lions, like if War of the Lions didn't have the multiplayer, I'd give this 10 out of 10. It's perfect. But because War of the Lions was a thing, like we had multiplayer in Dark Knight, Sword in the Order and all that. Like, man, this is tough. But if you're just speaking exclusively from a Final Fantasy single-player story, I'm going to give it 10 out of 10. I think it beats the original in every way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? It's better than the original by far. Now, if you're like someone just getting into it, I'd probably give it a 9. Because it explains a whole lot. It's wonderful. The voice acting, the characters. You're going to love them. You're going to hate some even more. I hate this one guy even more. And I'm like, the stuff he says. I'm like, whatever, Kevin Federline. Hopefully people who know me are going to say stuff. But yeah, you know, you can rename your generic characters, you know, and all that. It's just awesome. But I wish there was more to do in the post-game like War of the Lions. Just a little bit more. But I still love this game. 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10. In my opinion. So there's that. Sorry for the chair squeaks. Is it worth $50 though? I think it beats a night out at the bar. You know what I mean? Like if it's with your friends, like I'd rather buy Final Fantasy Tactics, Ivalice Chronicles. Absolutely. But yeah, guys, this was my long review for the Ivalice Chronicles. I think they're, for the most part, the development team did so many things right. You know, it felt amazing. I just wish there was a little more, but this is still an awesome version. And I'm not sure if it's the definitive version because there is missing content, but it is definitely better than the PlayStation 1 version. I don't think it's better for speed running per se, because there's just a lot of other dialogue and there's no like glitches. But for the most part, things will remain the same. You know, enemies and whatnot, no surprises there. So it's a faithful one-to-one recreation. You know, you're not going to get Time Janny's Final Fantasy VII Remake or Rebirth. But overall, it's very, very solid. I recommend it. You know, if you're having a hard time with money or other priorities in life, absolutely wait, in my opinion. But if you don't game, or like if Final Fantasy is your thing or Tactics is your thing, definitely get this version. I think it's worth it. Beautifully well done. I wish we got more like, you know, a new orchestrated soundtrack, a recreation of that, more artwork of all the characters. But for what we got and the price, I think it's fine. But yeah, I think next time, if there's ever recreation, remake, remaster, hybrid sort of thing, I think Square Enix invite me. I'll be more than glad to give my feedback. And yeah, I just really love the game. You know, again, thank you so much to you guys for me having a platform. Square Enix, Ria, I love you. Hit me up. I'm going on a trip soon. If you want anything from Korea, I got you back. Now you guys have been amazing so far. Like, this was one of the shining moments of my life. It sounds silly, for the past few years, and yeah, I'm grateful. I suggest getting it. Like, if you want to get like other games like Metal Gear Solid Delta or Silent Hill, no, definitely get Final Fantasy Tactics. This is better than those games, absolutely. Forget the night out at the bar. Now, if it's with your wife or girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, you know, your significant other, you Limp Bizkit, results may vary. Definitely get this game. You know, $50 for what they added and all that. It's not that bad of a price, you know, not unless your dollar is not strong in your country. But yeah, anyways, this was a long rant review video, but it satisfied almost everything for me. It's better than the original PlayStation 1 version by far. Don't expect War of the Lions stuff, unfortunately, but the original development team wasn't part of War of the Lions. But to me, those are the best versions of Final Fantasy Tactics, period. War of the Lions offers something different with multiplayer, more post-game content and all that. But this one, drew inspiration from more of the Lions, but improved the PlayStation 1 version in like every single way. Yeah, harder difficulties. It is more balanced. But there are some things that are clearly much better. Not true balance. But anyways, check out the Ivalice Chronicles. I love it. A lot of my videos, the guides will still stand and be the same. So yeah, again, sorry this was long. Take care. If you made it this far, I'm wishing you all the best when it comes to your health, wealth, and happiness. I'm losing my voice. Again, take care. Love you all. Hit me up on Instagram. Leave some comments. I'll get back to you. Love you. I'll hit the credits right now.